one thing that you will take away from my story tonight, it is that I was my grandmother's favorite. And I was my grandmother's favorite for a lot of reasons, and she was mine. And I will tell you one of those reasons tonight. We had a tradition that started when I was 7, and it went on for nearly 40 years. And that was baking every single holiday. And I would go spend the night before, at her 1930s brick colonial in Arlington. We would wake up in the morning, we would have the exact same breakfast, the exact same lunch. We would make the same recipes in the same order. And so imagine my surprise one day, because my grandmother always had all of the ingredients ready to go. And I'm in my 20s, probably early 30s. And she says, "Lammy, I need you to go down to the basement and bring up some pecans." And I'm like, "Graham, really? We don't have any pecans here?" And she said, "No, I need you to go downstairs and get some pecans." So I leave the kitchen, I cross the hallway, and I open the door to the basement of my childhood nightmares. I have to reach forward to pull a chain to turn the light on at the top of the stairs. And as I do it, I brush my hand along the black polyester sheet that she used, or curtain that she would use to block her canned goods. In my mind, that was the cape that Dracula wore. So I go down the stairs, and I go into what could only be described as the inspiration for the bar in The Shining. You remember at the last moment when Jack Nicholson's face miraculously appears in a bar scene in 1922, right? So right in front of me is indeed this very large bar, and behind it is a mirror, and there are a set and series of shelves going up. Each of those shelves held Toby mugs. Does anybody here know what a Toby mug is? Thank God, Bill, I knew you would. So a Toby mug, they're British, and they're people's faces. And some of them smile, some of them grimace, some of them are grotesque. Some smoke a pipe, some wear a jaunty hat. It doesn't matter. That's a lot of eyeballs staring at you as you come down the stairs. So I look to the right, and it is the rumpus room of the 1940s and 50s. And it looks like I had just stepped into a cocktail party that everybody had just disappeared. The furniture is all set. My grandfather's piano is against the wall, and the top lid of the keyboard is strangely open. So I go to my left to go into the utility part of the basement. And as I go in, I have to step into a completely dark room, go into the center, pull yet another chain to illuminate the room. To my left is where the washing and dryer is, and inexplicably a windowless maid's quarters. If that is not enough to give you the creeps, I don't know what is. To my immediate right is the chest freezer where the pecans are. And it will also be the size that could fit 1, maybe 2 dead bodies. So I lift the top of the freezer, I grab 2 bags of pecans, because there's no way in hell I'm going back down to the basement today. I pick up these pecans, I tuck them under my arm like John Riggins. I drop the, did anybody get the John Riggins reference? Thank God! Let me start that again. Thank you. I tuck the 2 things of pecans under my arms like John Riggins. I drop the lid to the freezer. I spin on my left. I pivot. I grab the chain. I jank it. And I hit the stairs at a full run, because everybody knows that if you run really fast, they can't grab your ankles. So I run to the top of the stairs, and it hits me. I'm like, what am I doing? I am a grown-ass woman. And I kind of pull myself together, and I walk back into the kitchen with my 2 bags of pecans, and I put them on the counter like a hero. And I go and I stand beside my grandmother, who is just measuring, leveling, and dumping flour. And as she's doing it, she says to me, "Beth Marie, what are you so afraid of in the basement?" And I go, "What are you talking about, Grammy? I'm not afraid of anything in the basement." And she goes, "Because the only thing that would be in the basement is your grandfather." And he'd only want to get to know you. For those of you playing along, my grandfather died when I was 3. So I take a deep breath and I go, Graham, is Grandpa in the basement? And she goes, of course he is. He's in the basement, he's in the cedar closet where his bathrobe hangs. He sits with me every night at dinner, and he sits with me every morning when I drink my Senka. So that tells me it's not really a ghost, but it's this long-term relationship and that continuation of love. It allowed me the opportunity to ask my incredibly elegant, always beautifully dressed grandmother, what do you think happens when we die? And she goes, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen when I die. She goes, I'm going to be standing on a hilltop, and every dog I've ever known will come running to me, and I will know them each by name. And then she goes, oh, and your grandfather's going to be there too. So fast forward, it is 2007. 3.5 weeks before her 99th birthday, my grandmother has a massive stroke. My father, his sister, my Aunt Ann, and myself never leave her bedside. So after multiple days at Sibley Hospital when she's not regained consciousness, I talked my dad and my Aunt Ann into going home and getting some rest. And here was my rationale. Because I am a grown-ass woman, and I can handle anything that's going to happen. So they go. I sit down and proclaim to my grandmother, this is truly the worst sleepover ever. And as I'm sitting there, there's a tap at the door, and in walks this beautiful woman who looks like she's just stepped off the pages of a Sundance catalog. She's got long flowing skirts, she's got bangles, she's got long, beautiful gray hair, and she smells just the right balance of patchouli and sandalwood. And she introduces herself to me as a transition specialist. I am intrigued. She goes on to explain to me that part of what she does is when people linger between this world and the next, that there are ways to help draw them over to the other side. And so one of the things that she said was, let's play some music. I'm game, sure. So she puts on her little portable CD player. It is 2007, there were no smartphones, let me just say. Turns on her portable CD player, and my apologies for all pan flute aficionados in this room, but who thought that that is going to be the sound of heaven? Because I will tell you, that is not my personal belief of heaven. You're like, holy crap, this is horrible. So I have a brilliant idea. I say to her, by any chance, do you have anything with dogs barking? They can be barking from a distance, they can be just barking. I will tell you that somewhere, someday, that beautiful transition specialist is telling this exact same story, but from a very different perspective. And by the look on her face of that look of horror, I know that I do not come across well. So she leaves. And there is something that is really mystical when you are bringing somebody into the world and you're with them when they are leaving this world. And there's a lot of counting involved. You count breaths, you count contractions, you count the distances between them as they grow longer and longer. And somewhere around dawn, I recognized that Grammy's breathing had changed. And at that point, I did not want to be a grown-ass woman. And I am in a full panic. I am between the door, trying to figure out what I do, and Grammy's bed. And I am like this. And in walks another beautiful woman. This one had a stethoscope. And I said to her, hey, I need you to listen to her heart. I need you to listen to her lungs. And she goes, first of all, who are you? And which I thought was a great response. And after it kind of helped bring me down a little bit, she goes, what are you going to do with that information? Also a good question. And I said, I just want to know what's going on. I want to know what's happening. And she goes, you know what's happening. And she very gently moves my grandmother's leg aside and sits on the end of her bed. And she spends the next 10 minutes telling me what she believes happens at the moment of our deaths. And that 10 minutes was a gift. And she says to me, make your calls, I'll see you shortly. So my dad and my Aunt Ann come back, and they're around her bed, and they're telling stories of their childhood in Trinidad. They're telling stories of their childhood in Panama. They're talking about elegant dinner parties and, yes, fabulous cocktail parties. And my dad says to me, your brother needs to be here. Go call Tim. So I go out, it's 2007, I open my flip phone, and I call my brother and I leave him a message. I put the phone back in my pocket, my back pocket, and I walk back into Grammy's room. And my dad says she stopped breathing. So while I'm trying to figure all this out, my phone rings. And while we didn't have smartphones, we had ringtones. And my ringtone was Waiting in Vain by Bob Marley. I don't wanna wait in vain. A fabulous song at a really crappy time. So I am pulling out my phone, I'm trying to figure out how to turn it off without answering it, and I'm hitting everything I can. And all I'm doing is I'm going, oh my God, God damn it, shit, I am so sorry, oh my God, that was really inappropriate. And my aunt and my dad start to laugh, and it is these deep, deep belly laughs. And at that moment, my grandmother took one last breath, and then she was gone. And so while she may not have seen her dogs, and I hope she did, she heard the laughter of her children. She heard her favorite grandchild cursing like a sailor and the beautiful sounds of Bob Marley. Thank you.